No one in the galaxy remembered who wrote the rule. Some said it came from a civilization long extinct, wiped out so completely that even their name was lost. Others believed it was born from a single moment of terror, recorded in panic and sealed away. The origin no longer mattered. What mattered was that for over 3,000 years, every spacefaring species obeyed it without exception. The rule was short. It was simple. And it was never questioned. Do not interfere with Earth. Do not contact the humans. Do not let them know you exist. Civilizations rose and fell while that rule endured. Empires shattered. Stars went dark. Entire species vanished into cosmic dust. Yet the rule remained, copied into every Concord archive, whispered in every war council, taught to every young diplomat as an absolute truth of survival. Ambassador Cellari Tell of the Cassari had spent most of her long life defending that rule. She stood now within the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Concord, her slender frame supported by a crystal staff, her pale blue skin marked by the slow fading of age. For eyes scanned the chamber as delegates from dozens of species murmured among themselves. Many were young races, new to faster-than-light travel, full of ambition and confidence. They looked at her with thinly veiled impatience. Cellari had seen that look before. When I was young, she began calmly, her voice amplified across the vast chamber, I laughed at the warnings too. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. The humans lived on a single rocky world, she continued. No shield technology. No hyperspace engines. They burned fossilized remains of ancient life to power their machines. They fought wars over invisible lines and symbols. By all measures, they appeared insignificant. She paused, letting the silence stretch. That is why they are dangerous. A projection shimmered into existence above the chamber. Images flashed. Human hunters walking steadily across open plains while wounded animals collapsed in exhaustion. Soldiers advancing despite injuries. Cities burning at their own hands. Humans are persistence predators, Cellari said. They do not stop. They do not quit. They follow their target until it collapses, or they do. She changed the display. They ingest poisons for pleasure. Substances that would dissolve the organs of most species. They domesticated apex predators instead of exterminating them. They form emotional bonds with creatures designed by nature to kill. Some delegates recoiled. And when humans fight, Cellari said quietly, they do not fight to win territory. They fight to break their enemy's will. They design weapons not only to destroy but to terrify. They turn suffering into strategy. An ancient quote appeared on the screen, translated into a dozen languages. If they do this to themselves, imagine what they will do to us. That, Cellari said, is why the rule exists. Most of the chamber remained silent. Most. High Commander Zyrak of the Dravix Imperium leaned back in his seat and laughed. The sound echoed, sharp and dismissive. These are the creatures we fear, he said, his scaled jaw curling in amusement. A species trapped on its own world, throwing metal projectiles and chemical fire at each other? His officers rumbled with agreement. Their planet is rich, Zyrak continued. Water. Metals. A vast labor population. Their weapons cannot breach our shields. Their fleets do not exist. This rule is nothing but superstition. Cellari turned her gaze toward him. It is a warning, she said. One written in blood. Zyrak rose to his full height. The Concord hides behind fear, he snapped. We are Dravix. We conquer. We do not tremble at myths. Within days, the Dravix War Council approved the invasion. No formal declaration was made. No notice given. The Dravix fleet translated into real space at the edge of the Sol system with overwhelming force. 12 capital warships. Hundreds of assault carriers. Enough firepower to sterilize continents. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful. Blue oceans. White clouds. City lights glittering across the night side. Zyrak watched from the bridge of his flagship, confident. Begin planetary suppression, he ordered. The first strikes fell before humanity understood what was happening. At 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time, the sky ignited. Daniel Carter woke to a sound that didn't belong to Earth. It wasn't thunder. It didn't fade. It tore through the air like the scream of a god being torn open. He rolled out of bed as his cabin windows flashed crimson. The ground shook. Somewhere far beyond the mountains, something exploded with a light brighter than the sun. Daniel was a Marine. Instinct took over before fear could. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside. The sky was wrong. Massive silhouettes drifted above the clouds, slow and deliberate. Beams of energy lanced downward, turning distant towns into pillars of fire. His phone vibrated once with an emergency alert, then went dead. The power failed moments later. Daniel exhaled slowly. "So," he muttered, "it's finally happening." Across the planet, millions of humans looked up in shock and terror. Governments collapsed within minutes. Satellites died. Communication grids vanished. The invaders believed this would break them. They believed wrong. Daniel packed his gear and started walking toward the nearest town, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes locked on the burning horizon. Humans had survived worse than the end of the world. They just hadn't known it yet. By the time the sun rose over the eastern edge of North America, Earth was no longer the same world it had been the night before. Entire cities burned without warning. Not from nuclear fire, but from something colder, cleaner, and far more precise. Dravik's orbital weapons struck power stations, military bases, communication hubs, and transportation centers in carefully planned sequences. The goal was not extermination. It was paralysis. Break the systems, and the species would collapse on its own. From the bridge of his flagship, High Commander Zyrak watched the reports scroll across his tactical displays. Human satellites were gone. Their air defenses were scrapped. Their governments were silent. "Efficient," he said with satisfaction. His tactical officer hesitated. "Ground resistance is inconsistent, Commander." Zyrak flicked his eyes toward the display. "Clarify. Some population centers have collapsed exactly as predicted," the officer said. "Others have not." Zyrak snorted. "Fear reactions vary. They will stabilize." On the ground, fear was only part of the story. In Houston, Dr. Amanda Ruiz stood in the darkened hallway of a hospital that should have been evacuated hours ago. Backup generators hummed beneath the floor, keeping operating rooms alive while the rest of the city screamed outside. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "We triage," she said firmly to the exhausted nurses and doctors around her. "We don't panic. We don't abandon patients. If the world is ending, it's ending later. Right now, we work." A distant explosion rattled the windows. No one ran. In Colorado, retired Air Force Colonel Nathan Brooks drove through smoking streets toward a military base that officially no longer existed. Half the runways were cratered. Fires burned unchecked. Young soldiers stood frozen, waiting for orders that would never come. Nathan parked his truck, stepped out, and started shouting. "You! Get that fire under control. You inventory what aircraft we have left. If it flies, I want it armed." A lieutenant stared at him. "Sir, who are you?" Nathan didn't slow down. "Someone who remembers how this works. Move." Within hours, a command structure existed again, not because it was authorized, but because humans had a habit of rebuilding leadership in chaos. Meanwhile, in Montana, Daniel Carter reached the outskirts of a town that no longer had a name. The place was half ash, half rubble. Alien landing craft squatted in the fields like insects, metallic and humming. Daniel watched from the treeline as armored Dravik's soldiers marched between the ruins, weapons glowing faintly with contained energy. They looked unstoppable. Daniel didn't charge them. He waited. That night, he found survivors hiding in a collapsed barn. 17 people. Farmers. A schoolteacher. A mechanic. A teenager clutching a hunting rifle with white knuckles. "They took my brother," the mechanic said quietly. Just dragged him away. Daniel listened. Then he nodded once. We don't fight them head-on, he said. We don't try to win today. We survive tonight. He showed them the alien weapon he'd taken from a fallen Dravix scout earlier that afternoon. The thing was heavy, unfamiliar, humming with restrained power. They bleed, Daniel said. I checked. That changed everything. By the third day, Dravix landing parties began reporting casualties. Small ones at first. A patrol vanished in a forest. A supply unit failed to arrive. Communication relays went dark without explanation. Nothing organized. Nothing predictable. Commander Zyrak frowned at the update. These are civilians, he said. Why are they fighting? His officer hesitated. They are not retreating, Commander. Even when injured. Even when outnumbered. In Texas, hospital staff repelled a Dravix squad using fire extinguishers, scalpels, and raw desperation. In Michigan, factory workers turned heavy machinery into improvised weapons. In Alaska, hunters disappeared into the snow and never missed. Humans weren't coordinating. They didn't need to. Within a week, the Dravix had lost 2 cruisers to attacks that made no sense. Human pilots flew outdated aircraft straight into alien formations, exploiting brief shield fluctuations before ejecting at the last possible second. Hackers discovered alien communication patterns and fed false data into Dravix command network. Zyrak slammed his clawed hand onto the console. They should be broken, he snarled. They have no leadership, no fleet, no future. An older officer spoke carefully. Commander, they are adapting. Zyrak turned on him. Impossible. Respectfully, the officer said, they are learning faster than we anticipated. On Earth, Kevin Ortiz hadn't slept in 3 days. His laptop was running on scavenged batteries. Alien circuitry lay dismantled around him. They think in loops, he muttered. Predictable ones. When he cracked his first Dravix signal, he laughed, a sharp, almost hysterical sound. They talk too much, he said. Across the planet, similar moments were happening. Scientists deciphered alien materials. Engineers repurposed wreckage. Soldiers studied enemy movements and shared what they learned however they could. The Dravix had expected submission. What they found instead was resistance without permission. High Commander Zyrak finally sent his first encrypted message back to the Imperium. The humans are not behaving as projected, he reported. They do not surrender. They do not flee. They fight without structure, yet with alarming effectiveness. He hesitated before adding the final line. Recommend reinforcement. On Earth, Daniel Carter cleaned alien blood from his hands and looked at the people gathered around him. They were tired. They were scared. But they were no longer helpless. They came to our world, he said quietly. That was their mistake. He raised the alien rifle. This isn't their ground, he continued. It's ours. The night echoed with distant explosions and something new, human laughter, sharp and defiant. The war had just begun. The Galactic Concord had never convened an emergency session for a single developing species before. Yet now, representatives from 47 civilizations filled the vast chamber on Kasari Prime, their voices layered in confusion, fear, and disbelief. The massive central display showed live projections from the Sol system. Burning cities, wrecked Dravix cruisers, human aircraft striking from impossible angles. Ambassador Selari Tel stood motionless at the center of it all. I warned you, she said softly. The Dravix envoy, Karax, bristled. This resistance is temporary. Humans are undisciplined. They lack unity. Once reinforcements arrive. They are unifying, Selari interrupted. Her 4 eyes narrowed. You just don't recognize what that looks like for them. She changed the display. Footage showed humans dismantling alien weapons, reverse engineering components in underground labs, teaching each other how to fight through decentralized network. It was chaotic, inefficient, and terrifyingly fast. They are not waiting for orders, Selari continued. They are solving problems independently. That is how their species evolved. On Earth, Major Linda Torres watched Kevin Ortiz work with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. He looked half dead, dark circles beneath his eyes, fingers trembling as they flew across the keyboard. I can see them, Kevin said. Most of them. Their patrol routes. Their supply ship. I can mess with them. Linda exhaled slowly. You just turned the invasion into a guessing game. Kevin didn't smile. Good. In another hidden facility beneath the Rockies, Dr. Megan Sullivan stood before the heart of alien technology. The engine core pulsed softly, bending spacetime in ways she had only ever seen on chalkboards. It's elegant, she whispered. One of her assistants frowned. Elegant? This thing destroyed half the planet. That doesn't make it inelegant, Megan replied. It just means it was used poorly. She began writing equations across the wall, her hands moving faster than thought. Patterns emerged. Possibilities. We can build this, she said finally. A general behind her scoffed. In how long? Megan turned. If we're desperate? Months. Silence followed. By the end of the first month, the Dravix invasion had stalled. They controlled orbit, but the ground was a nightmare. Every ruined city was a trap. Every forest concealed ambushes. Humans learned which frequencies blinded Dravix sensors, which angles bypassed their armor, which wounds killed them fastest. High Commander Zyrak's confidence eroded day by day. They're using our weapons, he growled at his staff. How? Captured units, an officer replied. And imitation. They're building crude versions already. Zyrak's claws flexed. Send in more troops. They're dying faster, the officer admitted. Close combat favors the humans. That made no sense. Dravix warriors were stronger, taller, better equipped. But humans fought like nothing in the Imperium's archive. They feigned retreat. They lured soldiers into confined spaces. They attacked supply lines instead of front lines. They hunted. Daniel Carter's group had grown to over 200 fighters. Farmers stood beside former criminals. Teenagers learned from veterans. No ranks. No salutes. Only trust. They think we're animals, Carl, the old farmer, muttered as they planned an ambush. Good. Animals know how to survive. They struck at dawn, melting back into the hills before Dravix reinforcements arrived. 3 alien transports burned. The humans vanished. Zyrak finally sent a full distress call to the Imperium. We underestimated them, he admitted, voice strained. They do not break. They adapt. They persist. The reinforcement fleet launched within hours. 32 warship. Veteran commanders. Enough firepower to erase Earth's resistance entirely. Back in the Concorde chamber, Cellari watched the deployment with dread. You are making it worse, she told Carax. Every day you fight them, they learn. Every ship you lose teaches them something. They are still trapped on their planet, Carax insisted. Cellari said nothing. She was watching Earth. Deep underground, the first human-built prototype hummed to life. Megan wiped tears from her eyes. It works. General Patricia Cole didn't celebrate. She turned immediately to logistics. How many can we build? Megan looked at the schematic. As many as we have resources for. Across the world, factories reactivated in secret. Materials flowed. Designs spread. 8 months after the invasion began, humanity launched its first interstellar warship. The Vigilant rose silently from its hidden cradle, engines folding space itself. 17 more followed. When the Dravix reinforcement fleet arrived, they found something impossible waiting for them. Not a dying species. A rising one. Admiral Christopher Vance stood on the bridge of the Vigilant, hands clasped behind his back, studying the tactical display. They're forming a standard attack pattern, his second-in-command reported. Vance nodded. Predictable. Orders, sir. Vance's eyes hardened. Scatter. Hide. Let them think we're afraid. The human fleet vanished into moons, rings, and asteroid shadows. The Dravix commander laughed. And then his scouts began exploding. The battle was over before the galaxy understood it had begun. When the last Dravix ship fell, drifting in burning fragments near Jupiter, Selari closed her eyes. The rule had been broken, and the humans were no longer sleeping. The destruction of the Dravix reinforcement fleet sent shockwaves far beyond the Sol system. On Cassari Prime, the galactic Concord chamber sat in stunned silence as the final combat data replayed. 32 Dravix warships gone. Veteran commanders, dead or captured. A fleet designed to crush entire civilizations erased in a single engagement. Ambassador Selari Tell did not look surprised. "They've learned how to fight in space," one delegate whispered. "No," Selari replied quietly. "They remembered." The Dravix ambassador Carax stood rigid, his scales dull with stress. "This was an anomaly," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The humans used deception. Ambush. They will not succeed again." Selari turned toward him slowly. "Deception is not an anomaly for humans," she said. "It is tradition." While the Concord argued, the human fleet reorganized near the ruins of the battle. Wreckage from Dravix ships was already being collected, analyzed, stripped for materials. Humans moved with frightening efficiency, turning victory into preparation. Admiral Christopher Vance watched the process from the bridge of the Vigilant. He had lost count of how many hours he'd been awake. It didn't matter. "Casualty report," he said. "Minimal," Commander Maria Santos replied. "We lost 3 decoy ships. Crews evacuated as planned." Vance nodded. "And the prisoners?" "Secured. Cooperative so far." That surprised no one. Dravix warriors were trained to dominate, not to lose. Once defeat became undeniable, fear set in fast. Within days, intelligence extracted from captured officers confirmed what Selari already knew. The Dravix homeworld was exposed. They had never imagined a counterattack. Their defenses were designed to project power outward, not to repel a predator coming straight for their throat. On Earth, the announcement came quietly. The war was no longer defensive. Human fleets were moving outward. Daniel Carter heard the message through a patched-together broadcast system in the Montana hills. He sat on an overturned crate, cleaning his rifle as the words crackled through the speaker. "We are taking the fight off-world," the voice said. "This war will not be finished on Earth." Around him, the camp went silent. A young woman spoke first. "Does that mean it's over here?" Daniel shook his head. "No. It means it's changing." He looked at the stars overhead, sharper now without city lights. "They came to our home," he said. "Now they get to learn what that feels like." 3 months later, the human fleet emerged above Dravix Prime. The planet was larger than Earth, wrapped in violet oceans and steel-gray continents. Massive cities glittered across its surface, unaware that extinction hovered just beyond their atmosphere. 24 human warships held formation. They didn't fire. That unsettled the Dravix more than any bombardment could have. On the surface, Emperor Velrix stood trembling at the balcony of the Imperial Palace. His long reign had known conquest, not consequences. Now the sky was full of silent human vessels, watching. "They haven't attacked," he whispered. Carax swallowed. "Humans don't always strike first." A shuttle detached from the largest ship and descended slowly into the Capitol Plaza. Billions watched through public feeds as its ramp lowered. Admiral Vance stepped onto alien soil. He wore no armor, no visible weapons, just a simple uniform and an expression carved from exhaustion and resolve. The Emperor forced himself forward. "Why are you here?" he demanded. "If you wanted us destroyed, you would have done it already." Vance met his gaze. "You killed millions of my people," he said calmly. "You burned cities. You targeted civilians. You thought we were weak." The Emperor opened his mouth, closed it again. "We could do the same to you," Vance continued. "We could turn this planet into glass. Some of us wanted that. A murmur rippled through the plaza. But that isn't why we came, Vance said. He gestured upward toward the fleet. We came so you would remember. The Emperor's voice shook. Remember what? Vance took a step closer. Remember what happens when you attack a species that adapts faster than it breaks, he said. Remember how long it took us to build that fleet. Remember how quickly we learned your technology. Remember that we crossed the galaxy not for conquest, but to make sure you never try this again. Silence followed. You will rebuild what you destroyed, Vance said. You will surrender every officer who ordered civilian strikes. You will pay restitution. And you will broadcast one message to the entire galaxy. Carax whispered, What message? Vance's eyes hardened. Don't wake the humans. The Emperor collapsed to his knees. The treaty was signed within hours. Across the galaxy, the ancient rule was rewritten, not as myth, but as fact. Human ships did not conquer Dravix Prime. They withdrew after ensuring compliance. They left behind observers, not occupiers. Fear spread faster than war ever had. In her final years, Selari Tel watched humanity take its place among the stars. Not as tyrants, not as saviors, as watchers. They learned restraint, her assistant said. Selari nodded. Which is what makes them truly terrifying. On Earth, cities were rebuilt. Children grew up knowing the stars were no longer silent. And on a hill in Montana, Daniel Carter watched the sunset and smiled faintly. We're awake now, he murmured. The galaxy agreed. The galaxy did not calm down after the treaty with the Dravix Imperium. It did the opposite. Fear spread faster than any fleet ever could. Trade routes rerouted themselves away from human patrol zones. Old grudges were quietly set aside as rival species reconsidered what war truly meant. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Concord began reviewing its laws not out of philosophy, but out of survival instinct. Humanity had entered the stars, and nothing felt stable anymore. Ambassador Selari Tel watched the changes unfold from her private chamber. Reports streamed endlessly across her console, human observers attending Concord sessions, human engineers assisting border worlds, human warships appearing in systems that had once been lawless. They move quickly, her assistant Velen said quietly. Too quickly. Selari nodded. That is how they survived on their own world. On Earth, the transition from survival to expansion was messy and uneven. Entire governments had collapsed during the invasion. Others had fused together out of necessity. What remained was not a single unified authority, but a shared understanding. If humanity did not stand together now, it would never get another chance. Admiral Christopher Vance resigned his military commission 3 months after returning from Dravix Prime. He refused medals. He refused ceremonies. He accepted only one role: oversight of humanity's off-world defense initiative. We don't need heroes, he told the council. We need guardians. That philosophy shaped everything that followed. Human fleets did not occupy planet. They monitored choke points. They intercepted slave convoys. They dismantled pirate strongholds that the Concord had debated for centuries without acting on. Species that preyed on the weak learned very quickly that humans asked questions only once. Daniel Carter never left Earth. When offered a command position in the expanding fleet, he declined without hesitation. He returned to Montana, to the hills where everything had begun. The resistance camps faded away as stability returned, but Daniel stayed, helping rebuild towns that had once burned. People still recognized him sometimes. You saved us, they said. Daniel always shook his head. We saved each other. Across the Atlantic, Kevin Ortiz stared at a hollow display showing a human-built communications array spanning 3 star systems. He rubbed his eyes, exhausted and amazed. All this, he muttered, because they killed my sister. Major Linda Torres stood beside him. No, she said gently. Because they underestimated everyone. In the deepest research facilities, Dr. Megan Sullivan faced a different struggle. Humanity's rapid technological growth frightened even its own scientists. Power that had taken other species millennia to master had been reverse-engineered in years. Entire branches of physics were rewritten. We need limits, one committee argued. Megan disagreed. We need understanding. Limits come after. Her work led to breakthroughs that changed interstellar travel forever: safer engines, more efficient power systems, and weapons that could disable fleets without destroying them. Humanity was learning restraint. That, Cellari knew, was the most dangerous development of all. During the Concorde's next full assembly, Cellari addressed the chamber one last time. Age had bent her frame further, but her voice remained clear. "The humans are not your enemies," she said. "But they are not your children either. Do not patronize them. Do not provoke them. And do not mistake their mercy for weakness." A delegate from a minor empire asked nervously, "What happens if someone does?" Cellari did not hesitate. "Then the galaxy will remember why the rule existed in the first place." Far beyond Concorde space, remnants of the Dravix Imperium struggled to rebuild. Their once proud fleets were shadows. Their military doctrine was obsolete. Their warriors, haunted. Carax, now stripped of his title, spent his days advising younger officers. "We thought strength was domination," he told them. "It is not. Strength is adaptation. And humans adapt faster than fear spreads." The warning went largely unheeded. Some species never learned. When a distant coalition attempted to enslave a newly discovered pre-spaceflight civilization, human observers intervened quietly at first. Warnings were issued. Evidence presented. Negotiations attempted. They were ignored. 3 human ships appeared without announcement. The slavers' fleets were disabled in under 10 minutes. Their command vessels boarded. Their leaders detained. No planet was burned. No civilians harmed. The message was clear. Back on Earth, children grew up learning about the invasion as history, not trauma. Schools taught the truth. Not glorified, not sanitized. We survived because we worked together. We won because we learned faster. We endure because we choose restraint. Daniel Carter attended a small ceremony in his rebuilt town. A new memorial stood where the old one had burned. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he felt something he hadn't in years: peace. Not the absence of danger, but the presence of vigilance. That night, Ambassador Cellari recorded her final journal entry. "I feared humans for most of my life," she wrote. "I believed them to be a sleeping weapon, best left untouched. I was right and wrong. They are dangerous, yes. But they are also capable of choosing who they become." She paused before finishing. "The galaxy is safer with them awake." The stars outside her window burned steadily. Human ships watched them all. Years passed, but the galaxy never returned to what it had been before humanity arrived among the stars. Old power structures weakened. New alliances formed quietly, carefully, always with one unspoken factor in mind. Humans did not demand territory. They did not seek tribute. They did not rule. Yet their presence shaped every decision made beyond Earth. They watched. That alone was enough. Human observer vessels drifted near volatile borders, their sensors active but their weapons cold. Trade lanes once plagued by piracy became safe almost overnight. The mere possibility of human intervention changed behavior faster than any fleet ever had. Ambassador Cellari lived long enough to witness this transformation fully. From her chambers, she monitored Concorde reports with a mix of relief and unease. "They have become a balancing force," her assistant Velen observed. Cellari's eyes remained fixed on the data. For now, she had learned never to assume permanence when humans were involved. On Earth, humanity struggled with a different challenge: identity. For thousands of years, humans had defined themselves by borders, conflicts, and rivalries. Now they were something new. A species no longer alone. A species others feared and respected in equal measure. That transition was not smooth. Some groups argued humanity should dominate the galaxy while it had the advantage. Others demanded isolation, fearing retaliation someday. Debates raged across Earth and its growing off-world colonies. Admiral Christopher Vance addressed the Global Assembly one final time before retiring completely. "If we become what others fear," he said, "then they'll eventually unite against us. Power without restraint always ends the same way." His words carried weight because he had proven what humans could do without restraint, and had chosen otherwise. Daniel Carter followed those debates from afar. He rarely left Montana anymore. His body carried old wounds, and his mind carried older ones. He spent his days repairing homes, teaching hunting skills to kids who had never known a quiet night sky before the invasion. Sometimes they asked him questions. "Are aliens monsters?" a boy asked once. Daniel thought for a long moment. "Some are," he said. "Some aren't. Same as us." Beyond human-controlled space, tensions simmered. A coalition of minor empires, resentful of human influence, began secret military development. They studied human tactics obsessively, trying to replicate what made them effective. They failed repeatedly. What they didn't understand was simple. Human strength was not technology. It was mindset. When the coalition finally launched an attack on a neutral system under human observation, they believed speed would protect them. They struck quickly, brutally, hoping humans would hesitate. Human ships arrived less than 6 hours later. No warning. No speeches. The engagement lasted 12 minutes. Coalition vessels lost propulsion, weapons, and communications almost simultaneously. Boarding teams secured command crews with surgical precision. Civilian infrastructure remained untouched. When Concord investigators arrived days later, they found no devastation. Just defeated fleets drifting powerless in space. The message transmitted afterward was brief. "Stand down. Release your prisoners. This is your only warning." The coalition complied. In the Concord chamber, fear rippled again. "They didn't even destroy them," one delegate whispered. Celari responded calmly. "They didn't need to. Human restraint had become its own weapon." Dr. Megan Sullivan watched the engagement data from a research station orbiting Mars. She felt a strange mix of pride and worry. "We've made ourselves very good at this," she said quietly. Her colleague nodded. "Too good." Megan didn't answer. Years later, humanity formalized its role. Not rulers. Not enforcers. Guardians. They established the Watch, a decentralized network of fleets, observers, and rapid response teams answerable not to a single government, but to a shared charter written after the invasion. The first line of that charter was simple: "Never become the threat we stop." Celari Tell lived long enough to see that charter ratified. In her final days, she asked to view Earth one last time. The image displayed a blue world healing, cities rebuilt, forests regrown, lights shining peacefully at night. "They survived," she whispered. Velen nodded. "They did more than survive." Celari closed her eyes. "Yes. They chose who they would be." Her final journal entry was transmitted to the Concord archives after her passing. "I once believed the greatest danger was waking the humans," it read. "Now I understand the truth. The real danger would have been if they woke without wisdom." Across the galaxy, the updated rule spread to every world, every station, every academy. Do not provoke humanity. Do not mistake silence for ignorance. And never forget, they are watching. On Earth, Daniel Carter sat beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Human colonies had begun to spread, but Earth remained the heart of it all. He smiled faintly. "We figured it out," he said to no one. For once. Above him, human ships traced silent paths among the stars, not as conquerors, but as sentinels. The galaxy slept easier because of them. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous thing of all. Time changed the galaxy in subtle ways after humanity took its place among the stars. Worlds that once relied on fear learned caution. Species that had built empires through conquest quietly dismantled them, choosing trade and diplomacy instead. Not because the galactic concord demanded it, but because humans were watching and humans remembered patterns. They remembered who preyed on the weak. Earth became something unexpected, a symbol, not of dominance but of consequence. Visitors arrived carefully, under strict protocols, their ships kept at respectful distances. First contact, when it finally happened, was controlled, deliberate, and calm. Humanity did not rush. They never rushed again. Daniel Carter never left Montana. The hills were greener now. Towns rebuilt themselves with stubborn pride. Children laughed in streets that once burned, their skies no longer empty, no longer terrifying. Daniel liked to sit on the same hill every evening, watching the stars brighten one by one. Somewhere out there were ships he helped make possible, even if he never flew in one. Somewhere out there were worlds that slept peacefully because someone like him had refused to surrender. A young girl from the town climbed the hill one night and sat beside him. "Do you miss the fighting?" she asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. "No. Do you miss the people?" "Yes," he said after a long pause. "Every day." She looked up at the stars. "Are they afraid of us?" Daniel thought about alien emperors trembling beneath silent fleet. About war councils silenced by 12-minute battles. About warnings rewritten into law. "Yes," he said honestly. "But that's not what matters." "What matters then?" "That we don't give them a reason to be afraid again." Far beyond Earth, the galactic concord continued to evolve. Humans attended meetings not as leaders, but as reminders. When disputes escalated, a single human observer often ended them without speaking. Silence carried weight now. The watch expanded carefully, never faster than humanity could ethically control. New recruits studied not just tactics, but history, human history. Every failure, every war, every moment when power had been abused. They were taught one lesson above all others. Never forget who we were when we fought ourselves. Dr. Megan Sullivan stood in a quiet lab years later, staring at equations she once would have called impossible. Humanity's technology now surpassed anything the Draviks had possessed. They could cross the galaxy in weeks. They could disable stars if they chose. They never chose to. She archived her final project and locked the terminal. "We're done chasing," she said softly. Her colleague raised an eyebrow. "Chasing what?" "Fear," Megan replied. "Now we manage it." On Cassari Prime, a new generation studied Ambassador Selaritel's journals. Her final words were required reading for every Concord diplomat. "Humans are not monsters. They are mirrors. What you bring to them is what they return, magnified." The ancient rule still existed. But it had changed. Do not wake the humans. If they are awake, do not provoke them. If they are watching, be better. One quiet cycle, long after the invasion faded into history, an unknown signal reached the edge of human-monitored space. It was weak, broken. A species calling for help. Not conquest, not trade, just survival. Human ships responded within hours. Not with weapons powered. Not with demands. With aid. When the rescued species asked why, Admiral Vance, older now, slower, but sharp-eyed, answered simply. "Because someone once ignored our screams," he said. "We won't make that mistake." The galaxy took note. On Earth, Daniel Carter closed his eyes as the sun dipped below the horizon. His hands were steady now. His scars faded but never forgotten. "We're awake," he murmured one last time. "And we're choosing what that means." Above him, human ships moved silently through the stars, guardians, witnesses, and warnings all at once. The galaxy had learned the truth too late. Humans were never the danger. What they became in response to danger was